Welcome to the iDefine TV Business Spotlight series where I, your host, CF Jackson, get to bring to you some of the most informative and inspiring guests. And today is no different. Today we have with us Jamie Calaccio, who's a master certified life coach, writer, and writing consultant, and an international public speaker. She spent 25 years in academia as a scholar and professor teaching writing and literature. But listen to this. In 2018, she left all that behind to follow her spiritual calling. Now, it's a lot of things that she has unfolded and has done, and we're going to get into all of that, let it all peer out as we're talking together one on one. Is that okay with you, Jamie?
Sounds awesome. Yeah. Thanks, Sia.
Wonderful. You're my pleasure. I'm excited to be here because I'm going to give a little tip. We're talking about women, 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 women. So I wanted to go really big and bring it back down because you help women in so many different ways. And one of the most important things is our voices because that is something where we are our foundation is our voice. And so I want to go really big because we have been trailblazing as women for the last couple of years, but sure for the last decade, but most definitely the last couple of years. And so I want to ask this question, looking at where we were trailblazing, and no matter where we are in our walks, we have for the first time Madam Vice President Kamala Harris, no matter where we are, you have a woman, right? And then secondly, we have the Supreme Court Justice. For the last four, out of the last four, three have been women. So we're on the government side. But then in the corporate world, a lot more women have been appointed as you say as CEOs of these companies, and more may have been there already, but they have not been publicized. But now we know there are a lot more women, and so with these women trailblazing and being in these positions that have been heavily for men, and making these points of how to get there. What is it that a woman is required to be whole, but yet trailblazing to keep their voice, to be authentically them, and to be able to be successful? And they just scale it down to themselves as an entrepreneur, a wife, a teacher, whomever it may be. But these women who are vice presidents, Supreme Court justices, CEOs of corporations, they have something that they embody. So we can start there of what is required to be whole with while you're trailblazing where you are in your relationships and in your business.
So I think one of the most important things is that women just want to be themselves.
Mm-hmm.
We just want to be able to speak our truth, and we just want to be authentic. We don't want to have to pretend, or we don't want to have to play a game that, other people want us to play, or try to fit into a mold that other people have created for us.
Yeah.
We just want to be who we are as authentically women, and we want to be able to be heard.
Yeah.
And I think for a long time, women couldn't break the glass ceiling because they weren't masculine enough. And if they were masculine enough, then that was a problem.
Yeah.
So one of the things I like to do is I work with women who are, awesome. They may be ordinary. They may have made mistakes in their lives. I've worked with women who are incarcerated and they don't have a voice, but by listening to them and offering them space, they can tell their story. And the books I write are all about giving people voice. They're all about how women have been marginalized throughout history, particularly Black women. That happens to be my area of specialty. And so if they've been marginalized or silenced, what have they been doing that we don't know about or we haven't heard about yet?
Yeah.
So for me, it's important to give women that voice and really empower them and say, you know what, you have something to say. You're a really important, special person.
Yeah.
And it's the kind of thing I do in my coaching as well.
Now, what causes, I mean, most women, and why are oftentimes we seem to dim our own lights when it comes to reaching the next level, or it could be either something that's in a relationship with a parent or significant other and in corporate world. What is it that have a tendency to do that where we're timid to be fully, as you say, in terms of being holistic and defining what that holistic means in terms of your coaching women to be all of them who they're purpose to be, do, and have?
Well, that's a really good question. And I like how you said what causes us to dim our own lights. I think of the biblical phrase, don't hide your light under a bushel. And so if you think of how we all have an inner light, we're all born with goodness and light.
Sure.
And ostensibly we are beloved children of a beloved creator, however you decide to define that. But over time, because our society is patriarchal, meaning male dominated and male led, the norm has been for men to lead and women to follow.
Yeah.
And so when women move out of that role, that's when, that's when sort of the apple cart gets upset. But oftentimes women have decided to play this role of being subordinate because they don't know that they don't have to, or they've been forced to play a subordinate role. But a lot of women now, as you pointed out earlier, are breaking out of that mold, and they're saying, no, I have power and I want to live into my power, and I have something to offer the world and I'm going to offer it. And I'm so inspired by the new Supreme Court justices. I'm inspired by Kamala Harris. I'm inspired by Hillary Clinton. I'm inspired by a lot of women who, you know what? I'm going to share my gifts with the world. I have something to share. And it's often hard because there's a lot of criticism attached to that. But it's still important because then they're models for other girls. When you see a female lawyer, when you see a female doctor, when you see a female CEO, you're like, yeah, I recognize that. I can do that.
Yeah.
30, 40, 50 years ago, you didn't see that very much. So it wasn't something you could aspire to because you didn't even see it. You didn't know it was there.
Yeah. And you're stating that there is so many different components to where we are trailblazing from, like you mentioned, the others like Hillary Clinton, and even goes for entertainment with Oprah Winfrey, which she had trailblazed to do. And so, but a lot of that is, like you mentioned, displaying the term of holisticness and how that helps in terms of you helping women becoming the whole of them so that they can be in tune to strive to be the whole. Because I think sometimes you can strive to be this greatness, but you really got to be aware of who you are and be in tune with the spiritual self, your physical self, the mind, the body, eating right, thinking right, talking right. So, and to educate us about the holistic world, how that looks, and how you help people understand it for them as women in coaching.
Yeah. Okay. So that's good. Thank you for clarifying that. So we're not just our brains.
Yeah.
We're not just our bodies. We're not just one thing. Like you said, we are all mind, body, and spirit. And when they're all in alignment, that's when we feel good.
Yeah.
Right? When there's a disconnect between being in our body and our spiritual self or our intelligent self or whatever you want to call it, then there's some kind of a disconnect, and then we don't feel right. We may feel depressed. We feel silenced, and usually illness comes when there is kind of a disconnect. So I try to help women acknowledge and recognize their spiritual side, be comfortable in their bodies, and really know that they have a beautiful mind and that they're all connected, because what you think comes out in how you behave. That's right. And it also affects your health. I used to suffer migraine headaches, for example, and I was depressed. And part of that was I wasn't in an alignment. I sort of hid my light under a bushel. I was one of those people. So I think part of what my journey has been is, as I grew into loving myself and feeling whole and attending to my spiritual side, being comfortable in my body and being comfortable being smart and intelligent and all of those things that go with it, as a scholar and a professor and a writer, the headaches started going away, the stress started going away. And so I coach women who want to feel good and don't know exactly how that's going to happen. A lot of times we just don't know. That's why we have coaches. If you knew everything, you wouldn't need a coach.
Right.
I encourage people to be able to express themselves and love all parts of themselves.
Wow, it's amazing because sometimes people don't recognize, like you stating, the migraine is something that we constantly, like someone was mentioning, I heard beforehand, a belief is something that the belief is something you just think over and over and over again. So, for example, if you continue to speak, I have a migraine, I have a migraine, I always have this, I always come. I'm very particular about words about always and never. When someone comes to me and say, I always, I'm like, well, you always do something, you never does something. Already, I know you're not being truthful, like, so, so if you continue to believe that, you're going to continue to perpetuate that result, maybe a good result or a bad result. And you come to believe that, for example, the migraine, you continue to be kind of like it was embedded that you have to have these migraines because of X, Y, and Z,
Well, actually, I want to say something about that because that's important. When we start using I am statements or we start repeating things about ourselves, you're right. That's the thing that kind of comes true. That's the thing we kind of manifest. And I realized that even though I'm a trauma survivor, I'm not my trauma. I'm a Carpaccio. And yes, I experienced X, Y, and Z. And part of my goal and my sort of my calling is to work with people who have experienced that and need a hand because somebody held their hand out to me. And so I feel called to hold my hand out to people, whether they're in corporations or whether they're, wherever they are in their lives. And so I'm not, I'm not a survivor. I'm not, whatever, a migraine sufferer. I'm Jamie and I happen to have migraines or I happen to have depression or something like that, but it's not who I am. And that's a really big distinction to make for people that don't think that way.
That is so true because sometimes people, you've overcome something and they still want to tag that on because I think sometimes people, they feel safety or they love to have that, identification of something, they identify themselves with that. But if you overcame that, why not? You've overcome that and moved on. But sometimes people hold on to that. So when it comes to women and you coaching them to be self-loving, to take care of self-care, are there anything you do to show them or help them to kind of shift their thinking or their beliefs to release themselves to that old person? Because as we move along, we're constantly shedding our lives, we kind of re-evolving. And women have a tendency to be all things to everyone, but then they put the last person themselves in the back end. And again, it comes to the wording, what we believe that we're supposed to be, subjected to everybody else, but not put ourselves in the forefront. So how do you help women to get that shift to the I ams and all that?
Well, part of it is the language. It's how we talk to ourselves.
Yeah.
So when I ask somebody, what are you bringing to our meeting today? What would you like to talk about? They will say things that denigrate themselves. They will say things that put themselves down, or they'll say, I need to do this, or I didn't do that, or I'm so blank. And then I would say, okay, so let's listen to how you're talking to yourself, and so maybe a better way to say this. So I help people reframe.
Yeah.
Because as soon as you can reframe it from I need to, I'm excited to do something, or yeah, I am awesome. And I try to point out things I know about them or what I hear and pull it out and just show it to them and shine a light on it because they haven't seen it.
Yeah.
They've been in this other mode. So part of it is drawing it out of them and then pointing it out. Like it's sort of like Dorothy's slippers in The Wizard of Oz.
Yeah.
Dorothy thought she needed to go see the wizard and he was going to solve her problems. And so what does she do? She embarks on a very long, scary, difficult journey with a couple of other misfits, a guy without a heart, a guy without a brain, and a guy without courage. And off they go and they meet crazy flying monkeys and they're chased by a witch and they end up falling asleep in a field of poppies. And they undergo all these trials and tribulations only to find out that the wizard isn't even a wizard. He's just a guy behind smoke and mirrors. And they are so disappointed.
Yeah.
And when they get back, they realize that they grew stronger. And then Glenda comes up and says, hey, Dorothy, you didn't need to do all of that. You had the power all along. All you have to do is say there's no place like home. And so that's how I think of how all of us, women, men, everybody should be thinking is we have the power inside and we don't have to go look for it elsewhere.
But Jamie, though, we're not taught that. We are taught to depend on external factors. We come into the world as clean slates, clean spiritual beings, and then we don't even have fear. We're taught to fear, we're taught all these things. And then when someone says that they have the power, the wherewithal to bring about change within themselves or others, you're frowned upon because you're not supposed to have that embodied power. And so that's the struggle that women have because they say, we come to a place where we're the second, we're second fiddle compared to everyone else, even behind the children, even behind the husband, behind the elders. Women still, I mean, no matter what, the women are the last. And, they say the first shall be last, the last should be first, but I don't know. Women still, I don't think so. It doesn't seem that way. But we're making strides today. And so, with that said, in terms of you mentioned that you have been in some type of trauma, how did that help you catapult to where you are today? I would love to hear how did you leave behind your years in terms of a professor, a scholar, and decided to stride on this passion of a life coach, certified life coach, and helping women. How did that come about?
Well, I heard a call to be a priest when I was 8,
Oh wow.
and I couldn't be a priest because I was a woman in the Catholic Church and they don't ordain women. But I held on to this idea that I had a spiritual calling,
Mm,
and I was often active in the church. I went to a Catholic university, and then I left the church for a while because I felt very frustrated and unheard and
mm,
unwanted. And then I returned to the Catholic Church for a short while, and I kept getting the messages about women not really, having the gift, not going to be ordained. So I heard a call again. You need to go to divinity school. And I literally said, God, are you sure? Are you sure that's what you're asking me to do? You're asking me to quit my job and go into debt and take student loans out and go back to school. And the answer was yes.
yeah.
And when I say yes, and when I'm aligning myself, my higher self with my higher self, then those are when things are in alignment. That's when my mind, body, and spirit are in alignment. And when I sort of try to go off on my own way, that's when I don't feel right, or that's when things go wrong in my life. So I said, okay, I enrolled in divinity school. I became an Episcopalian. I ended up not getting ordained, but what happened was I was a chaplain for a couple of years, and I really loved that. But then I was asking God, so here I am. I don't have a job. My chaplain residency ended, and I can't find a job right now. And I didn't get ordained. Why did you bring me here?
Mm,
And I did. I asked Spirit, what are you doing? Why am I here? You didn't just bring me here for no reason. And Spirit said to me, you don't need a caller to do what I'm asking you to do. I've given you everything that you need. And now I'm asking you to go help women. And so the
Mm.
experience I had growing up, my experience teaching and mentoring, my experience as a chaplain, and all of the other training that I have has helped other people. And so I don't need a professional job title, and I
mm.
don't need a collar around my neck to do that. And that's how I ended up becoming a master certified life coach.
Wow. What a journey. I'm telling you. And I guess along the way, you really develop a lot more strength within yourself, listening more and more in tune. And what is
Mhm.
the main objective as you're coaching? How can someone get in connection with you, and what can they expect from being part of your assisting them to be the whole of them, holistically, the woman, empowering their voice, making decisions? How can you help them? What do you do to help these women?
Well, sometimes women are stuck in relationships and they're not happy
Yeah.
and may not know why they're choosing to be with certain people
Mhm.
that don't serve their higher selves. So then we look at why, what is the pattern, and where do you think that pattern came from? What are some of the reasons why you've been establishing this pattern and it hasn't been working for you? So I help them identify. I call it awareness, acceptance, and action. Become aware of what's going on, accept that it happened. It's not your fault. You did what you could when you did it with,
Mm,
with the information you had available or your ability, and then take action.
Yeah.
So if the thing you're doing now isn't serving you or serving others, then
Mm.
take opposite action. And then we define what the action is. How do you want to feel? I also use different modalities, neurolinguistic programming and trauma informed coaching. And I say, where do we want to go from here? And then what is that going to look like for
Mm.
you? And it's a risk. People have to take risks. They have to be saying, this isn't working. I'm ready to try something else.
Yeah, I like that because we are in a place where some things we get. It's somebody was telling a story. Was it? I don't remember who it was years ago. It's like a little parable, and it was a father and son walking through the woods, and they look up and they see an eagle flying. Like, oh, father gets the eagle, and he's flying, looking beautiful, and he goes below the tree line and comes back up. They really enjoy it. So then one point he goes really down, and he comes back up, and they see that he has something in his claws, and like, what is that? They couldn't tell, but the eagle started looking kind of bumpy and wasn't quite sure what was happening, but they can see that he had something in his claws. And all of a sudden, they went below the tree line and they didn't see the eagle anymore. So somehow the father and the son, they found the eagle and he had grabbed onto some type of rodent that was piercing at his heart. But if he had just, released it, he could have survived. And sometimes we have these habits, these beliefs, these ideas about ourselves and what's going on in society that we continue to put ourselves on the path where we're not listening to our inner voice, our inner spirit, who's guiding us to a better calling, a better place where we're supposed to be. Because you could have said, well, I'm not going to listen to that and stayed in academia forever and whatever and not really listen to the voice. But that's a positive thing for people to stop and slow down, to listen and get that support that they need to get to the next phase of being all they're supposed to be, especially women,
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I also help people who want to write. And, so I consult with other people. I do editing. I help people with using their writing voice. So for some people, writing is cathartic and it's a way to get their story out, And you made me think of something really important. And that is, there's a couple things. It's not easy to make changes. So I want to make sure people know this isn't like something I just did overnight.
Yeah.
It took me years of work, years of personal work on myself, years of working with a professional to really come to the place I am today. It did not happen overnight. It was a series of ups and downs and feeling like I was defeated and then I would have a victory. So it was really like this. And so I don't want to give the impression that everyone's just going to have sparkles and rainbows the first time they go out and try to, assert themselves, because that isn't the case. And so there's a wonderful story. It's a story of a yogi who lived in a cave and he was visited by all of these different kind of monsters, and they represented different things like fear and anger and all of these sort of negative things that he wanted to get rid of. And so eventually he worked very hard and he got most of them out of his cave, but one of them stayed. And it wouldn't leave.
Oh, no.
And so he said, okay. So he made tea, set the table, and invited the monster he named Mara. He invited the monster to tea, and he said, I see you, Mara. I see you.
Nice.
And so he actually put his head in the beast's mouth, and the beast didn't bite him. The beast leave, but he didn't bite. And so I guess the moral is there are some demons we can, get rid of, but there's that are going to stay. And so let's make friends with it. Let's make peace with it. Let's figure out how to live with it without letting it consume us.
That's a good one. That's it right there. Because sometimes people just don't they have trigger words or situations or places that, and they're not quite sure. You're not quite sure why you're going off the deep end or you get moody because, like you stated, you're just living and allowing life to happen to you, whether you're going into life with intentions and knowing who you are, being self-aware. So really, it's kind of like coming to you as a coach. You're helping people become self-aware of who they are, creating intentions and how to really unfold the whole of who they are as a woman. And at the same time, being a woman, they're able to be in a place where they don't feel less than or unliking of themselves. Because women get caught where they don't like their voice, where they look, and they have all these different things that kind of put themselves down more than they need to. And so a coach like yourself can help them break those barriers of feeling defeated and feeling less than. And with that, do you have like one-on-one coaching? Do you have group coaching? How do you facilitate a lot of your coaching programs or sessions?
Both one-on-one coaching for sure, and coaching relationships are extended. It's not a one-off thing. So
Yeah.
I offer 3-month, 6-month, 12-month packages,
Okay.
depending on what you're willing to invest at the time or what you're able to do. But it's an ongoing relationship. And I also offer group coaching. And a lot of times, we help each other. So it isn't just me doing all of the talking, it's all of the women have a voice.
Nice.
And I facilitate. And oftentimes what happens is the women are helping each other and supporting each other. So you're in a community. And then I offer writing. So if people want to use writing as a catharsis, I offer writing, kind of writing facilitation. So sharing what you're writing, and in a a no criticism zone. This is all about just being vulnerable and having people hold space for you. And so teaching people how to hold space for each other. And I think when women can learn that we're valuable and be authentic and hold space for each other, that gives us more courage to go and then help other people that way.
Yeah, because if you enter the room, if you come into the room as your best self, the light and being whole within the best you can be at that moment, because we're living beings, you continue to get better and better and better each day. You're gonna bring the light to somebody else, and with you helping someone being that light and recognizing, like I said, the thing for me, I think, is just being self-aware, learning what my triggers have been, because I'm not that anymore. But learning that is, to me, is so powerful. I tell people, one of the people I admire so much, two people, is Toni Morrison and Maya Angelou. And I say that because of the fact that I just see them as you never see them sweat. When someone comes to them, some crazy stuff, they just know how to respond, not react, but respond so eloquently they did. And it was just a beautiful thing. I said, those women are empowering. And that's the part that I like, to have that self-empowerment, that no one takes my power and I don't give it away to anybody, but to have that self-contained control where nobody, I mean, I'm sure they had many crazy questions, being at the time of racial disparity during the time, but it's maintained that composure. Like, you're not gonna break me. Even Cicely Tyson, it's just something about them when they respond, like, them some smart women. The vocabulary is up here, but this is how they manage themselves. And that's the thing. I think women, we can manage that, not now, no one to knock us off. We may feel it inside, but you won't know it, and stay strong. And if you can help people do that, Jamie, you want a whole other level. You need to go ahead and charge $1,000+ for your program.
Yeah, I'm so glad you mentioned like Toni Morrison and Maya Angelou. They're very powerful, inspiring women. I used to teach a course on Toni Morrison. It was my favorite course, and it was always very popular. And I ended up editing a collection of essays on how to teach Toni Morrison's work, because I believed in how important her work is, and how many needed to really hear it and understand it. And one of the things that she did, she's passed on, was gave voice to all of the African Americans who had been silenced and damaged by slavery. And he was able to tell their story when they couldn't. And then those stories continue on as inspiration and as emblems of value, personal value.
Awesome.
Because society sends us messages all the time telling us who we have to be. Do we have to be this skinny? Do we have to be that? Do we have to be that? Look at any magazine cover. Look at commercials. Have you ever seen a commercial with a man pushing a vacuum or spraying the kitchen counter with some disinfectant?
Oh no, I can't say it. I don't know. I'm looking at it now. Oh,
I want to see it. So women are much more than, whatever their domestic role might be.
That's true.
And as are men are much more than what they are at work. And I think we often try to pigeonhole people. And so as a coach, I try to help people say, here's you. You're beautiful. You were created in love. You were created by love. You were created for love. And so let's imagine what that beautiful, beautiful you, how do you want to feel? How do you want to express yourself?
I like that. And then you said it so eloquently, because at the end of the day, all we have is our first impression is us, and we have to love ourselves as we get up each morning and each day and go about our day. And
Yeah.
we have to love ourselves unconditionally in order for us to love others unconditionally. And I believe what you're helping women to empower themselves to be all they are, to be whole as they enter each day. I
Mhm.
think anyone who's needing some support, needing that guidance, this is what you need. And starting the year off, any day, any month, no matter where you are in terms of viewing this, is a great time to say, okay, I want to move forward within myself to be all of me as a woman. And if you're a man who sees this and know a woman, tread lightly with her, but offer this to her. She may need it as well, and you can connect with Jamie to see how she can support you. So,
Yeah.
Jamie, I mean, time is flown by because we can talk for hours about women because we have done so many great things. But I do want to ask, is there anything you want to share lastly to our viewers to help them or help women, and how can they connect and all that good stuff before we get out of here? Because you are a great woman to connect with.
Well, I would say that yes, I help women primarily because I'm a woman and I have obviously traveled this road, but I would love to work with men too, because a lot of men are like, I don't understand women, or I don't know what to say, or I don't know how to act. And so, if men want to work with me and understand women and be in deeper relationship with women, or just even get in touch with their feminine side, and feel safe and say,
Right.
yeah, I have these emotions. I don't feel comfortable, that is, I welcome that opportunity as well, because it's
Mhm.
important. We're all human beings. You know, we're all created in love.
Yeah.
And so women have just, I just have traveled that road, so I know a lot of it. But if men want to know more and be in deep relationship with women, then definitely come and see me.
But there you go. I mean, because we're all here to communicate with one another, and it's all centered around love. So you can communicate with self, the spouse, men and women. We're going to be in a different place. So I appreciate that. So men, you too. It'll be a great time to connect with yourselves and with your wife, your mother, cousins, and all that in between. So she's here to help everyone to embody their holistic self to be whole. It's been a pleasure. Time has flown by. I mean, again, we can talk so much. Then you bring up men, and a thought came to my mind. I said, we're gonna be here another half an hour if I talk about men and their specialness. So, but we have to go. But at the end of the day, it's been a pleasure, Jamie, having you here. And definitely, if you're looking to get some support and needing to be whole and scaling back some things that you're not happy with, you're not feeling full, converse with her. It's a conversation, doesn't it cost you anything? What does it hurt to ask and converse with her and get on her calendar? But
Oh
in the
yeah,
day,
I offer a free 30-minute discovery call. So if you want to meet with me for 30 minutes, we can talk about what your needs are and what your wants are, and whether or not it is a good fit and you feel like you want to work with me. And I would just like to say to all the people out there, you matter. And I mean that.
there you go. On that note, you matter, and we're gonna get out of here. I'm CF Jackson with iDefine TV, and we're excited about this conversation. And make sure you reach out to her and again, you matter, and we're out of here.